Hey everybody, it's Natalie and Evan once again.
Hi.
And welcome back to our Wednesday Fireside chat. Thanks again for joining us.
Love this new backdrop.
Isn't it great? I love this one.
This is a backdrop I wish we had, and so this is amazing to see that it's now
I'm
here.
Really glad. This is this guy right here. It's there we go. It's sort of like being a weather-man, except
we're not good at that.
No, I'm very bad at it. But this is the I guess our boss creature in the pre-alpha that we released, which so I wanted to talk about, and you wanted me to talk a little bit about the feedback we've been getting on the Terrorarium pre-alpha so far. And I actually think that this is a fairly good segue because a thing that has been coming up, and the feedback we've gotten is like medium limited so far. Like of everybody who's played the game, we've had a few people fill out the feedback form. But something that's come up again and again is it is clear to me how few people actually met this guy. And in fact, the pre-alpha that we released, in fact, was a one complete level with several geographic puzzles and one sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a boss fight, but like a boss capture sequence. And something that's been coming through in a lot of the feedback we've been getting is most people did not get past the first geographic puzzle, and in fact sort of like haven't really explored beyond that first area. So the feedback we've been getting is shockingly positive, considering that the environment is cool and the puzzle elements are cool and there's lots of neat things going on there, but no one has sort of talked about the level beyond that first very introductory space, and so I think somewhat disappointingly to me, most people who have played the game have not in fact played most of the game that we had to offer.
And I think that's fine for one reason, is that we haven't really told them what to do. The game just starts, and you're just shooting these things, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. We knew that there would be a problem. We included a little video about the controls. A
controller tutorial, which we literally made the day we were releasing it. It became suddenly clear to us that
we never told anybody what buttons did anything,
and that information just wasn't super available any place it occurred to us.
We rushed out the door a little bit of story context, a little bit of control explanation. The next step that I think it became obvious we needed to also put out, and I think probably a follow-up would be good.
I think so too.
Is for us to follow up with our alpha testers and say, by the way, this is how the level works. There is a pressure plate in one space, but it's not labeled, and there's nothing about that. There's no intro that says find a pressure plate. The other thing that's tough is when we have heavy Mugu and fire Mugu, we can switch between the two. When you throw the fire Mugu up onto the pressure plate, nothing happens, and so you're not totally sure that it's worth doing that. And then when you throw the heavy ones up, you can't actually see the gate in the same frame. And so something happens, but you don't know it happened because there's no audio cue and there's no visual cue.
I see.
So then, if you turn around, you've already done the heavy Mugu, you turn around and you switch to fire Mugu, it turns off the pressure plate again.
So it's totally possible you could have triggered the pressure plate successfully and not known it.
So step one, you don't know there's a pressure plate that controls the gate.
Problem the first,
Next, that pressure plate has its quirkiness, which is that it's not situated in line with the gate, and it toggles depending on which Mugu you toggle, and so I mean, so the conversation has been, we could solve this if we had made a tutorial,
right?
But maybe we don't need a tutorial. Maybe we need the game to be different so that
more intuitive. Yeah.
People don't have to just make those lateral jumps where they're like, that thing's a pressure plate. I need to put 10 heavy mugu on it. I need to turn around and see that this gate has been activated. And then there's like 3/4 of the level still there. So, I mean, it was a wake-up call. And has led us to do a lot of different changes. So now we are pre-alpha. I don't even know what phase we're in, but
I guess alpha. I guess
we're working towards alpha now.
Yeah.
And we've had amazing feedback that we are making serious notes from.
Right. But and that like, I feel like the fact that most people did not get where we wanted them to is in fact a form of feedback.
Oh yeah.
Like that, the lack of data there is in fact its own kind of very, very important data.
And the cheat is to like say we should have told them how to play.
For sure. But
the right answer is we shouldn't have to tell them how to play.
Right. It should make sense.
We didn't show them how to play.
And like there's also, I mean, there does exist in the world like the demo stream that we did, which is now up on our YouTube, does include
it shows you how to play
full playthroughs of the level several times.
We just don't have a perfect overlap of our wonderful Twitch streamers with our our alpha testers,
which totally fair. We don't expect everybody to have seen everything, but there is like some data out in the world, I suppose. So I guess if we do want to further explore some kind of a tutorial, and honestly, I think it could probably be done in a couple of screenshots, right? Like, this is what a pressure plate looks like. This is, you know what I mean? Like,
I think for the sake of our
MS
pre-alpha
Paint.
folks, that they should just, they should have a chance to say, oh, by the way, there is a lot more here.
Right.
And
if you would like to explore it. Yeah.
And, we've heard your feedback, then none of you found it.
Right. Yeah, that like it's something that most people haven't encountered at all. So I think there's a possibility for an intervention that doesn't require like a whole giant tutorial, whatever, but it would be like, this is what a pressure plate looks like. This is what, a gate looks like. Try some things, because honestly we want you to explore the level again. It would be worth revisiting if you wanted to. So I think that
could they fill out the form a second time?
I could absolutely. So. I think so. There's no like, I don't think I have the option turned off that like you can only fill it out once. So
cool.
I can double check that. Like that's for sure like something I can toggle on and off. So I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't collect it again. And honestly, we've gotten only a few like full form fill outs at this point. So if we were to intervene at this stage and say like, hey, actually we've noticed this, if you want to try it again, like here's a couple hints for you. I think that like I don't think that would be poorly received. Like I think that would be something that we could do just to sort of like
I mean, we've already heard loud and clear it's not intuitive. So
we definitely have
we
that
don't
piece
need
of
that
feedback.
Over and over again. We'll hear it, I'm sure.
But it would be cool to get some people like at least trying that final like capture encounter and seeing what was happening there, and and at least giving them
things about like the height and falling back down. We've got a knock at the door. Hi.
Hello, you're on stream.
Oh, you've run away.
Whoever was knocking has officially fled. All right.
What it has led us to do next phase is that we are trying to do some deep dives into things that we know we could do better. And like controls is definitely one. I mean, we have this dual stick approach of like your location, your target location, and that is difficult right now. It reminds me a bit of the Binding of Isaac controls in that way.
Really? And that you have the it's also a dual stick where you're moving and then you're controlling your tier direction with the other. So like your movement and the like where you're facing and firing basically are two separate controls. So in that way it reminds me of that a lot. The difference is that it's like an auto like if you're pointing, like using that stick in that direction with the firing, like the tear firing.
Yeah.
As long as you're pointing in that direction, you're firing tears. You don't. There's not like an additional trigger, right? And I think the extra complicating factor that we have right now is in fact that that there's like your location, the Mugu's desired location, and then an additional like button press to fire them. And I've been wondering if it doesn't make sense to actually just make that part of the directional control, that like you're firing wherever you're not wherever you're facing, but wherever the like your cursor is. Like as soon as you move that cursor,
that you're constantly firing.
Yeah, unless you let it go. Does that, you know what I mean? See what I'm saying? Yeah. Like so, like you're moving here, and like if you take your if you release that thumbstick, you stop moving. Same sort of thing. Like if you release, if you
lean into it, it's like with a Segway.
Yeah, if you lean into it, you're firing. If you let it go, you're not.
Right.
As a possibility. So it's like a bit that might.
Interesting.
But also like.
So what we're doing right now is Adrian and Aaron are working on those exact experiments. Is like, let's build it this way. Let's build it that way. And we are just playing all the variants of that and trying to see which one we like, what controls feel right for the game, and what is most intuitive. So we're trying things, and that I think is a great one to add into the list of the pile of experiments.
Yeah, for sure. Because like I think it's always like if you can map a button to a thing, like that is obviously great. But if you can make something even simpler, I feel like as someone who's not like good at games in the way that there are some people are like extraordinary at things, like don't get me wrong, I'm on my like 2+ Bloodborne, like new game plus twice playthrough of Bloodborne, but like my relationship with that game is something special. But generally I'm not like great at video games.
I can't even imagine Fortnite, because it's just like, that's a game in which I die. Right.
I'm like, if we're doing Fortnite, like Aaron has been trying to get the team to like do like a LAN party Fortnite.
Yes.
And I'm like, cool, except if we're doing Battle Royale, I'm like number 98 dead. And then sitting there the whole time watching everybody else like live forever. Like I'm not.
Yeah, it would be like, we're all going to throw tomatoes. And they're like, but we need someone to stand against the wall.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who'd like to step into the pillory for us, right? Like, that will be me. So no.
Right.
But yeah.
On that note, I was thinking that it would be good. It's getting warm out, and I think it would be good. Do you know these? So this is me harkening back to like animators. Like there's a scene where they were animating The Lion King and Disney, and they brought a lion into the animator studio. And had a lion just kind of laying around,
and while they drew it,
like live sketching. And they've got other examples like that of just kind of the tactile experience. Like in Frozen, they did this one where they took people up into the high mountains and they made them tramp through like hip deep snow.
So it's like, so you can draw the like,
because these California animators had no context.
They live in Burbank,
what it was to try to like get your feet and like walking with this skirt. There's this great footage of an animator like holding this big hoop skirt and walking through the snow. And so I was thinking that we should go out in the back of the office with water balloons and just get ourselves into like, what is it like to throw Mugu?
To try and control these things.
And like what happens when the Mugu hits stuff?
Right.
And like, what does it feel like to just chuck 100 of these things at
like
something?
As fast as you can.
Yeah, like, you know, like that's right now, some of the things, because we've just kind of said we need this feature, we haven't thought of things like the gardener never gets tired. Yeah. And there's no like out of breath moment where she's like, I just really threw a ton of these things. Yeah. And so I'm toying with that idea. That is interesting. Now that everyone on the stream knows it before the staff does. But I'm
always the first to find out about these things because I get to do this stream. So it's like, guess what everybody's doing?
And I mean, I'm worried it'll inevitably turn into hitting each other, which is going to be bad.
Yes, that's 100% what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I think we need a bit of prep time for it.
Yeah. Give me some warning so I can have a spare underpants that day. Or something, but
I think it could be a good exercise for us to appreciate what it's like to splatter. We'll draw faces on them. We'll just hurl them.
Try maybe filling some with slime or goop or something too, or those what are those water beads? They those are really gross. I feel like having a few different interior substances and then seeing how it reacts could be kind of fun.
Okay, so we'll talk more about
this. We'll make that super gross and great.
So that would be a great live stream.
That would be a great live stream. It's we're doing a hands-on today, folks.
One of these is filled with whipped cream, and no one knows which one it is, and we're gonna go.
Yeah.
So
spectacular.
That and what? So thinking on that, the controls we've been playing with.
Yep.
Then one of the big things that I've been pushing for is to make things a little bit sloppier and more organic. And this is the thing, right now we have this arc that has a pinpoint accuracy, and when you throw every time it's just a perfect arc and nothing goes higher or lower or side to side. There's no spray to it at all, and I have this feeling that wouldn't it be great? And so we're talking about it behind the scenes, and one of them is you're throwing and throwing and throwing, and then one of them is just a super light one, and it goes way high, and it might land further, or it might land in the same spot but in a higher arc. But the idea of you throw, and one does 9 backflips and then lands or something to
There's
make
some randomness
to spice it up a little, to be this is not an exact science here. We've got to have some broken eggs to make these omelets sort of thing.
There's have you played the new BattleTech yet?
No.
Okay, so an interesting thing about that game is, and that a lot of people have pointed it out as a flaw, but I do think is interesting, is when you target something, what part you hit and how successful you are is random. So you can be I'm trying to shoot this guy directly in the chest because it's he's taking a bunch of damage there, and I know a little bit more will kill him. And you could just get a bad roll and he takes all of the damage on his shoulder where he's not damaged at all, and you don't actually end up killing him. And or an enemy has a crazy lucky roll and suddenly you take all the damage to the head and you're dead in one go. Right? So and a lot of people are have complained about how the imprecision of that is really frustrating and interfering with their because you can
you want to make the trick shot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You want to be awesome and do the thing, and it's so randomized what the impact is that you can't reliably predict what the outcome of your attacks are going to be. And I feel I wouldn't want to push it that far, but I think that there's perhaps some room for that kind of some deviation.
Yeah. So one of the things I've heard said in the office, and I don't know if it'll be a real thing, so don't hold me to it, but it's the idea that the first couple of Mugu might be slow, so that you have some granularity of I want 1 or 2, but then as you keep holding it down, the rate of fire goes up, and I think it would be interesting if the accuracy went down.
Right, yeah, makes sense.
That you were okay, these 2 perfect shots, and then it was just and
they were just fire hose.
And they were just getting wider and wider as you were losing control of the situation.
I like that. And that makes sense.
And so yes, you get these higher rate of fire, but less accuracy.
Accuracy. That's sort of like a Tommy gun. You know, it almost has to warm up a little bit, but then when you're spraying, it sort of is.
So. We're toying
more
with
of an area of effect.
A little more organic stuff, and the swarming is part of that too. And I can tell you about, again, I don't know if these are going to make it in, but I wanted to give you a sense of some of the experiments we're trying.
Definitely.
That we really thought were the next phase for us, because when we're playing the pre-alpha, what we're finding is that the really cool moments are when, we personify those Mugu a little bit, and we think about like, you know, that one gift that you were showing there was just like, every time you're just like, ooh, that was a
one
lot.
Hurts. Yeah.
And it's like, it's the screams of them that might be, you know, right now we just have one standard like whomp sound or something when they die.
But there needs to be more like variation in the noises that they make.
So that, and then also we were thinking like there's a few things, like for instance, right now they're kind of mindless, and they like, you can walk them, like you can light a bush on fire and then you can just walk right through the bush. Right. And all of those Mugu that are not fire Mugu are going to die.
Yeah.
And
horribly.
The thing that we're not really doing yet is showing you that they know.
Right.
And,
they're like, ooh.
And we were talking about like giving them like a moment to just be like, what? Oh, okay. And then and how much better that would feel.
Right, that like moment of hesitation.
Yeah, that like they didn't really like this idea, but they do follow orders.
Right, so like, okay.
I think those kinds, we're just calling it like personality, and it's just showing, it's just an animation thing, and how the way that the swarm is a little more dynamic.
Sure. Well, I love, and it's so tiny, but that like hand-drawn little animation that Jeff did of the Mugu like landing, like rolling and landing, and sort of like, because it lands and then sort of like blinks and looks around, and that like brought them to life for me, personality-wise.
It's like a recovery moment.
Yeah, there. That like, whew, I made it. You know, that kind of like that moment of confusion, like adorable confusion is pretty great.
And so we've been playing with other ways to express that, and one of them is that although the swarms, like if you walk by a hazard with the swarms, because they just cluster around you, you can kind of, there's an edge that you know is there, and you can just walk along and keep that edge in mind. We've been toying with adding a bit of curiosity to it.
Right, so they like sort of like look over
or that some of them might be eager and just be like, they might break off from the swarm and be like, oh, what's this? And then like when those few like eager beavers get out there and like check it out and die, then the others you can have a moment of recoil where it's just like, whoa, like,
ooh. That was good.
Yeah, but these kinds, it's more in the animation style and a lot of procedural dynamic animation for that. But it sounds like they're taking big steps towards that, so that's great.
That's great.
For me, that's where I'm finding the most fun is right now, is knowing that they know.
Yeah.
Knowing the movie.
That their demise is imminent, and they're like at least reacting to it, if not like actually doing anything to preserve themselves. Right. You know? Yeah, like it's like, well
Yeah. Just saying, I'm aware of this and now I'm gonna die.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty hilarious. Yeah. And it seems like I'm super impressed pretty much every day by like how much of that aspect of the game like progresses, you know, like we went from a turnaround of the gardener, like just a flat 2D, like from a sketch to a like clearly defined and outlined turnaround, and then like a few hours later there's a preliminary model.
Is there?
Yeah,
I haven't even seen it.
Yeah in the like
did Mahomes send that?
Something got posted in Show and Tell like 3 minutes before we went on, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's a 3-dimensional version of this. Yeah, check it out. So like there's like, it moves fast, you know, like it moves incredibly fast right now. It's pretty cool. So like that kind of stuff is really interesting. And then, you know, we've been posting like updates about the gardener.
Whoa.
Yeah, check it out, right? Like, so, you know, from today we went from, and I haven't even had the chance to post this yet.
Yeah,
but like, so we went from the sketch I posted earlier to like, there she is, you know?
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. Like the speed of things is pretty shocking. And, you know, like we had, you know, our 3D intern Maddie has been like making original plants. So instead of like, you know, like asset bashing and like combining things from the asset store, we have like original stuff. And, you know, like she posted a bunch of stuff in the same channel. And it's like, oh, wow, no, those are like, we now have like half a dozen unique plants like a week later, you know, so like the speed of those things is really, really cool to see unfold. So
great.
I feel like, once the, you know, the gardener being in place is important, but like, once that happens for the Mugu, like we're talking a lot about finding the fun, you know, that, and that's something that was like the subject of our last dev blog post for sure.
Yes.
And I feel like their personality, like beyond game mechanics, right? Because I think that like what we wrote about mostly in that post was like mechanically, structurally, like how do we make this game as fun as possible, but in terms of like personality and narrative, like those, making sure that the gardener looks amazing and the model is perfect, and that the Mugu look amazing and the models are perfect, like those are the two big like finding the fun elements there, for sure.
Right. Well, we're on the way.
Yeah, we're doing things. Things are happening.
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
We just gotta keep doing it.
Hold on, somehow.
And meanwhile, we spill all the beans. About
Exactly. We tell everybody, it's like, hey, this is what happened today.
We haven't posted this yet. Here it is.
Here it is. Yeah, this is why you tune in here, so you can hear it first. Speaking of spilling the beans,
yes.
So I feel like we really need to talk about this. So we have had a lot of conversations about like, how much do we reveal and when, and like as a company who has taken on a lot of client work, like usually that's a very easy answer, which is none, right? We're under like every NDA in the world, and they're very scary, and we like for sure cannot release any of that work that we do.
There are still projects that are out in the world that I can't even say that we did.
Right, that you can never reveal that we ever worked on, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's, you know, so a thing that I think is a really lovely thing about working with your own, like our own IP, is that we get to control who sees what and who gets invited into that process when, and like if we want to tell the world about all the cool stuff that we're working on this project, like we can and do. But sometimes that gets taken away from people. So we've been talking about this a lot, and a thing that happened today that like sent all of us into like, they gave me hives as somebody who works with other people's like intellectual property.
Because you know it was a mistake.
Yes, absolutely.
And all we can think about is how much hell they're paying.
How much, like how terrible their life is right now. So someone out like in the back end of the Walmart website.
Yeah, Walmart Canada.
Posted on the pre-order site all of these titles that have not yet actually been released or announced. And it looks like a lot of game companies were like planning to do that announcing at E3, which is coming up very shortly.
Yes.
And suddenly, via the Walmart.ca page, like all of those announcements have been preempted by this like mistaken like dozen listings. It's such a disaster. It for sure is like, whoever that is, they have given me like so much anxiety this afternoon.
Well, because I mean, it could have been one button.
Absolutely. They took something from draft. You know, somebody was trying to get it out ahead of their life and like had it in draft forever and like accidentally hit publish all.
I hope Walmart Canada has better systems than that.
I also do, but
apparently not. That they don't have those systems in place. And so, I mean, it's so staggering. Like, I looked at that list of games.
Yeah.
And I really was not exaggerating when I think, like, that is $1 billion worth of investment to make those games. There are so many new game titles being released in that list that I swear E3 must have been the launching ground.
It must have, yeah.
And E3 now is getting like second kick at the can on $1 billion worth of marketing.
Oh my god.
And that is not great.
Nope.
Because I mean, that's the hype, right? Like they want to be in the news with their curated release.
Right. And it's also disrupted, like, from a journalism point of view. Like, everybody is like, okay, folks, like, we're going to go to E3. We're going to, you know, do the live blog where we break the whatever. We have the embargo. We know all the stuff. We have the stories ready to go. Like, we know when we can hit publish on them. And now, like, they've also interrupted all of that, like that whole cycle.
Well, yeah, now the game journalists are like, what do I write?
Like, can I talk about it? Like, yeah, like, what do I do? Like,
because I have no art to associate with this, or even a release date,
or a full title. In a lot of cases, but I know it exists.
Right, and somebody's gonna scoop it.
Oh, yeah, so, like, is it me? Like,
so I have to say something because my readers want to know that we're up to date. Like, if we just let it go...
Sure.
It's not good.
Right.
So, it's a disaster today. and it's... No, we're not having any problems. We've gone the opposite direction, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But... if you have enough of a fan base and enough of a marketing spend, then I totally see that this one-time release is the way to go.
Absolutely. Because you live by that, like, huge boost in like,
you need a global, like, you want to be front page news for one day across the whole world. That's your plan.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't have that luxury. You guys are, how many viewers we got now?
I don't have it up right now, but yeah.
But you guys are the real fans, the ones out there. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing hinges on it not getting out beforehand.
And you're not getting scooped and
we have signed non-disclosure agreements that have $1 million penalty on them.
Us. Our tiny like
if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person in the wrong restaurant, we're on the hook for $1 million in damages. And that's on the projects at our scale.
Yeah.
That is not Borderlands 5 or whatever the hell just got announced.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just astonishing because it's quite possible that they each have their own penalties
associated with them. And there's like a dozen AAA titles that are like flagship titles. And
wow.
I don't know.
Wow. And the thing, like, it's not even close to the amount of damage that, like, a Cambridge Analytica or an Equifax is going on.
It's for sure not the same
in privacy breaches, but it will be treated as worse. Because these are big titles with lawyers, it's like, it won't be one of those things of like, oh, sorry, 100 million people got all their personal information leaked. It's like, no, one juggernaut got all their information leaked.
Right. Got a tiny bit of their information. Got like a title.
I know,
title.
just a name.
That it exists.
Yeah.
That it for sure exists.
But that will have higher consequences than like the Equifax breach.
Right. That like everybody's sin in the world got released.
Right.
Yeah, like, sure.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Where they're like, well, that is poor.
Right, it's like, what have you done, Equifax? Like, nothing.
Yeah. Whereas Walmart could be paying millions in damages.
Yeah.
I don't know for a fact.
I don't know, but
knowing the way our system works is possible.
It is for sure possible. That's a lot. Anyway, so that for sure was
that's crazy.
It's pretty bananas. But like, it's kind of nice to, not that we don't have like stories, and not that we don't have like some cards we're playing pretty close to our chest, and that we're like, there are things that we hope for that we can't yet talk about, and like there's it's not like there are no stakes here, but there is something kind of nice about, generally speaking, being like, we can kind of tell everybody whatever we want. Like there's and the choices that we're making about what not to reveal to people are just personal choices we're making collectively as a team about for the best health of the game and like our own interests in it.
Don't worry, they're not that good.
They're not, no, for sure. But like,
it's not like they're a really juicy thing.
Yeah, there's no like deep story or anything. But like, we can, like, we're just making those choices, and most of the time the choice we're making is like, let's just tell people it's cool. Like let's invite them into the process, and there's something.
The only worry I have now is breaking this habit with other client work.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, there are going to be other projects in which this culture now needs to be shut
does
down.
not work. Yeah,
shut down.
Yeah, it does not work at all.
It was amazing to see how much everyone embraced the one direction. Now they're gonna have to embrace the other direction.
Remember, everyone, that's only for this. It's in this one way. Yeah, that's for sure, totally a thing. Mm-hmm. So what other stuff do you want to talk about today? Oh, you're a bit concerned about continuing to pay us and keep the lights on. So I suppose that's something we might want to talk about, which seems like it should not be a problem, and yet because we're very lucky in a lot of ways in terms of our we
knew we were going to get some funding from the Canada Media Fund, and we already have our first in funding from the Ontario Media Development Corporation.
Right.
But that is not the whole amount. The way it works is based on deliverables.
Right.
And the first deliverable is a contract.
Right.
And then usually it's like a beta somewhere. So we're not even down far enough to trigger that. And then there's a final payment.
Right, of course.
And so the problem that I have is cash flow. Just I have to pay week by week salaries until we get something good enough that we can release it and then ask for the money, and then the money doesn't come in tomorrow. It comes in after you've filled out a lot of documents. And I mean, the reason is because we need to, there's a lot of accountability built into the system, but it is an amazing amount of accountability built into the system. And I don't know if everyone appreciates that we have been working. There have been at least one, maybe two full-time employees working on accountability documentation for 5 months.
That's crazy. That's so much work. That's so much labor to produce that.
I think you measure it in thousands of hours.
Yeah.
Of documentation that needs to be signed. I've had to go and notarize documents to make sure that we've declared our finances correctly. We've had to go back 3 years and make sure that all of our finances are public, available to the agencies, and that's fine. But we didn't have our affairs in order at that moment, and so we needed to get it together. And so it's been about going back in time, sorting out receipts from 3 years ago.
Right, yeah.
Literally, we've been doing that so that we could get figured out enough that we could get this money.
Right.
The money couldn't be deposited in the right bank account because we had the wrong province registered from.
Right, so we had to transfer. You had to transfer all of
our banking records had to be transferred, and we had to go to the bank and explain this, and they took a while because that's not something they normally do.
Nope. Sure.
And we had to set up a specific bank account for Terrorarium. Anyway, I mean, I'm just ranting at this point. The secret that I think a lot of these talks don't cover is just the fun part that we are trying to share with the fans is requires so much cash management and documentation that it's something that, I mean, I'll just mention it here because I think we are at the stage where we might get our first check.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Check number 1. So I think a lot of folks, I mean, first of all, we are very lucky in Canada that so much of this funding exists, and there's a lot,
I mean, it's the riskiest part of game development.
Absolutely,
is first money in the door.
Yeah, where that money is. But I think that for a lot of people, they sort of think that if I could just get a grant of a decent size, then then I would have that buffer and just be able to make the thing and it would be easy. But that's for sure not the way that it works. So it's yes, we have. We technically have that budget, and we budget the development cycle for that money, but we've been working on this game now since December, right? Without any of that money, with it sort of with that fictional money hanging in front of us somewhere, and we've had to continue to roll forward expecting it to arrive eventually, but like we've still had to front it until it's shown up,
right.
which it has yet to do.
Well, that's been
right?
my job. I mean, nobody I'm sure is excited about that part, but it's just credit. I mean, I'm just working on showing that we have the money coming in so that we can get the line of credit so that we can use it before we even get it, because we have to have it.
Right.
We have to deliver the entire game before we get the last payments.
Right.
And so those are not cheap checks, you know.
Those are big chunks. So
and those big chunks need to be completely spent. So that means the bank has to trust us enough to give us the line of credit. And so it's been just, I mean, the only reason I'm bringing it up today is that I feel like we've had a very successful week.
Yeah.
And that it may surprise some of our viewers out there to realize that the reason I'm celebrating is that we might get our first payment.
Yeah. Like we might have done enough.
So
post pre-alpha.
All of this was before day one.
Yeah.
And
before funding day one.
Yeah. And now we need to go back and pay the bank.
Right. And then start the cycle over again of going back into debt until the next payment comes through. So
yeah.
So it's like even with like we have, I think, a lot of security, relatively speaking, you know, in the sense that we're not you know, like we don't have to do this development cycle for like maybe years on credit or whatever, you know.
Yeah, like we were talking about Cuphead recently,
right?
Which had its own like ups and downs in the development cycle. Sure. That was a 6-year development process.
Right, like it was announced so long before it appeared, like so long.
How much money do you need to pay your own mortgage in 6 years? Because I just cannot fathom how Cuphead pulled it together financially.
Yeah.
They did an amazing job on the game, but
like
a miracle happened to get them to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not worried, and I keep telling people, you know, keep it all together, folks. But that's just hopefully some context to show you, like, we've got a lot of other moving parts that aren't just finding the fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Right now, I'm trying to just keep that part in the background and say, don't worry, everybody, go and find the fun.
Right.
And, you know, I'm throwing ideas into a very busy room of people who are like, we don't need any more.
Yeah, we're good.
Have you seen the feedback that we're getting from our viewer? Like the players are giving amazing
feedback.
Tips. You can tell there's a mix of people who are game developers and people who are just players, because the feedback,
which is great. Like which is for sure, like the people who like there's I think people who just play games and people who also make games give such disparate feedback, because people who I think either Aaron or Jeff said this, and I thought it was a really good way of summing it up. People who make games tell you how they would have made it, right? And people who play games tell you the game they wish they were playing, right? Or compare it to other things that they have played and loved. And both of those pieces of feedback are mega useful, right? Like, you know, in their own different ways, for sure.
Right.
Like, I know Aaron for sure has talked about,
they just don't always meet in
the middle. They don't always meet in the middle. And, like, that's where we have to make decisions, of course, about the feedback that we're getting, you know. And I feel like any, you know, synthesizing and sorting through feedback is actually, like, a completely its own skill set, for sure. Because if you take on all of the feedback unquestioningly, like, you're never, you know, like, if you try and please everyone all the time, it's not going to work. But you were like, okay, if everybody is saying this thing, there's something here. Or like most people are having a problem with this. So like, that's all, you know, that makes sense. But like, if somebody's like, nah, I don't like this. It's like, well, I do. So, you know, like if somebody's like, this, you know, this whole like adorable gore aesthetic isn't really for me. Well, like, we're not, okay. Like this might just not be the game for you. You know, like that's not.
Well, and that's why we were trying to ask people like, what games do you like in the survey stuff,
totally, so we can make
it's a good comparison to say, okay, well, all these people who didn't like it,
right.
they chose these games as their favorites. But...
It's like, oh, you like grim dark, black and white. You like a very different art style, or you like stuff that's very serious, or you're interested in very
not
narratively.
Not that we're dismissing it, but
not
it's
at
good
all.
Context for us to
It's
say...
simply not the game that we're making.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love those games too. Like, I as previously mentioned, like, I have played more Bloodborne than is reasonable for one single human. It's like, that's what I do to relax. I'm a huge Souls fan, which looks nothing like this game and plays nothing like this game, you know? Like, but I think that there's still something to be learned from the way that, like, dying in those games is expected and part of how you learn. And there are consequences to death, but they're not like punishing, right? It like assumes you're going to die all of the time, and that's straight up just the learning mechanic. And you like die until you don't, and then you try the next thing, and then you die until you don't.
You've been reading a lot of the dev blog.
I have. Yeah. It's almost like I wrote it or something.
Weird. I know. I mean, those articles were great. I saw some of the team were like, you must read these articles because I think they're poised well. We might have to try that again, of like these kind of like, here's some other cool stuff.
Absolutely. I really like doing that kind of like, there are for sure people in the world much smarter and more eloquent than me, and anytime I can mine their content as well is for sure super useful. But any time we're like we're part of the reason we're being so open, I think, is to make ourselves open to outside like influence and assistance in a way that that we for sure trust everybody on this team to do an incredible job, and everybody here is amazing, but I think like every one of us is also very humble in the sense that we're for sure willing to take feedback and assistance whenever it's offered. Like, I know Aaron has talked about being on stream more than once and somebody being like, hey, why don't you do it this way instead, and him being like, that is actually a great idea, and I will.
I totally thought of that.
And I totally thought of that. Wow. As I change my strategy here. Like, so there's, So
I wish you... Can I have that kind of a live stream?
What would you like to live stream?
It's just going to be like contract negotiations. it's going to stink.
Yeah. There you go.
And be like, I think you should write it this way. Well, ugh. Not legally binding, I guess.
I guess not. Is there like legal Twitch?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a legal Twitch.
Right, like somewhere where like lawyers can watch you like work on contracts all day. No. No. Yeah. Like the paralegal streamers.
Well, the problem that we consistently have is that a lawyer's job is to protect the client from usually risk.
Right, yeah.
And we are in a very risky business. And it's just very hard to have these contracts that are like anticipating every outcome when we don't even know like what platform we're on or something. Like there's
many we have guesses.
There's so many unknowns, and they're trying to write it in a way that like makes it airtight, and you're like, well, it might not be that.
Right. It could not even be that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's to cover every eventuality, right?
So that's the tricky part that I'm having, and what I'm sure nobody wants to see live streamed. Right. Yeah. So I'll come back here and I'll gossip with you about all these things that we've been thinking of. But I am very happy to do it next week and see you again.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. This is always a pleasure. And we will see you next week for another Fireside Chat.
Great.
Right, have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.